I'm curious, Mr. Mayor. I'm from Colorado. I've witnessed the Waldo Canyon fire, the flooding this year. Denver has its own kind of responsibilities and challenges. Throughout this last summer, a drought before this, the last 12 years, the state climate experts on trying to get people to understand that this is going to be a long-term, probably new norm, not not a drought every 10 or 15 years, but this may be the new norm for the next 30 or 40 years. I'm curious how Denver and how, from your perspective, what are the preparedness and mitigation and prevention areas that you're focused on?
Well, most mayors don't come in with the technical skills to respond or to lead emergency management systems. In Denver, the Director of Emergency Management is one of my appointees. And early on, when I came in office, he says, so what do you want me to focus on? And I'm like, emergency response, being prepared. And fortunate for me, he is the expert. And the reality is what you do between disasters is the most important time. And so, for example, I asked him, what is it we need to be doing in that dash, from the one disaster to the next, in the middle, what do we need to be doing? And he said, obviously, trying to simulate and to perfect our response, but also to deal with the things that you may not even think about. And we just talked about cost. For example, we in Denver put hundreds of contractors on-call every year worth millions of dollars. How about we create an agreement that says in the event that we're responding to a disaster, one, you're part of the team, but two, we're holding costs at normal levels. So they don't escalate because we need, and it's the same thing with our suppliers, okay, for wood, for electricity, for water. Whoever we normally contract with, there's an anti-escalation clause in the midst of a disaster. And we also immediately the clause also allows us to transition to a pay-you-later kind of deal. So the city government is not all of a sudden trying to come up with cash in which to respond. Now, I will tell you that in Colorado we have an interesting provision, and it's called the Tabor provision, which requires cities or taxing municipalities to set aside a certain % of their annual budget for emergency response or disaster response. Denver today has some $32 million sitting in the bank somewhere that we cannot touch unless we are using for response to a disaster. And in fact, if we touch it, even in a disaster, we have 1 year in which we have to pay it back penny for penny. And so that helps us to respond, but it also helps us to know that we have some resources there if we absolutely need them. But I think the key is to make sure we're preparing at all times and that we are trying to simulate response times. We have a command center in our basement with our emergency response team. I go down there and I feel like I'm in CSI. I walk in and the team is sitting there, fire, police, paramedics, environmental health. Everyone's sitting around the table. We all have our appointed roles. And for me as mayor, my job is to make sure I understand my role when I sit at the table. They're giving me the facts. I've got 30 seconds to give them the information that they need so they can make the proper response.